Hi, my name is Jesse Durham, and today's subject is going to be retirement. R. Nelson Nash, in his book, Becoming Your Own Banker, addressed this subject in a couple of crucial pages, actually calling the name of that particular chapter the retirement trap. The wording is strong, the opinion there is strong, the advice and the counsel is just very, very helpful, has been to me. I hope that this discussion will be valuable to you. Let's start by recognizing that there are several views out there on the subject. For some, like myself, coming from a background as an employee, both having been a law enforcement officer and a teacher in the state of North Carolina, both of those professions were very laid out in regards to earning a salary, providing value and service in some way. But on the back end of the considerations of benefits, salary, etc., we would even have somebody come in on an annual basis who would speak about government qualified plans, the 401ks, the Roth IRAs, etc. So with that being said, I recognize that there are folks out there and can appreciate that people like Dave Ramsey use this term of Encore Career, meaning, sure, maybe you've had a particular career that you worked for some time and you get to a point to where it's time to move on, it's time to try something, it's time for a change, whether that's you pursuing a passion or just maybe in the same field and you're just bettering your position, whatever that may look like. That Encore Career is a term used. And then you have folks like Rabbi Daniel Lapin, who I've read behind, very enjoyable there, who say never retire. And that's a chapter in one of his great books, is never retire. Well, that's a very stark contrast to what kind of paradigm employees who were taught, go to school, get good grades, get a good job, pursue your career, and then eventually you'll just end up being successful by doing X, Y, and Z, making investments, etc., paying into government qualified programs and plans. And then here comes a Rabbi, Daniel Lapin, saying never retire. Don't just focus on putting in your, and for different careers, I understand there's different trajectories. Military folks, 20 years, that's a highly respected standard. I've got a great appreciation for all those who serve and protect. Great appreciation. In education, it was 30 years. In law enforcement, 30 years. So I understand that there are professions out there that have certain time frames associated with them. Let's consider some other opinions. I've already said that Nash, in his book, Becoming Your Own Banker, said that the retirement trap is one scenario. And then he speaks some about passive income being the verbiage that he chose to adopt for his own mentality and approach in considering a certain time in life, sure. Now, let's look at some others. Robert Kiyosaki has said many times, famously or infamously, however you choose to look at that, the rich don't work for money. And it would seem that is a great purpose behind obtaining retirement, is that we pursue something, we achieve something for a certain number of years, get to a particular level to be able to, whether that's building a small business to sell it off or a big business to sell it off and be able to retire and travel and do the things that we want to be able to do, fish, golf, whatever that may be, or as an employee or as an investor. But Kiyosaki said that the rich don't work for money. So then what would be the purpose? What is being pursued there? So I'm not here to make up that decision for you. My thinking on retirement has evolved over the course of years, and having been in different professions myself, and then mostly from practicing as a customer myself, just as a practitioner, practicing the infinite banking concept as described in R. Nelson Nash's book, Becoming Your Own Banker. So I recognize that we all show up to this subject with different conceptions, perhaps preconceptions about the idea of retirement. So it was Otto von Bismarck in the 1890s as the Chancellor of Germany that began promoting this idea of retirement. And the thinking behind that was to get the older folks out of the job force, so that would free up jobs and opportunities and employment for younger folks, because there wasn't enough jobs for everyone. Well, my thinking on that is that it is a scarcity mindset. That's an approach from, well, a lack of abundance. Whereas older folks are experiencing the apex and the climax of their abilities and their faculty, and they've sharpened and honed their skills to the greatest points. And we'll look at some examples here in a moment of some such people, and you no doubt have folks in your life, and I do as well, who are just crushing it at what they do, and it's because of the advancement of their years, their experience that they bring to bear in what they do. And I understand that because of health or age, we may approach tasks differently at different points in life, and yet that experience cannot be disregarded. It would be a great and a tragic loss that we couldn't even begin to know what would be added to what is available to us, as a community where you live, or as a society, as a world. Who knows? I mean, just imagine, and I hate to throw out the names now because we're going to get some folks in a second, but the Mozarts, the Einsteins, these folks that have just impacted the world in a big way. And of course, we could talk about more modern folks as well. I'm just making a point that age is not a limiting factor for ability in many regards. All right, let's consider some of what the financial experts and gurus of the world say. This idea that is being promoted vehemently of buying term insurance, investing the difference. I've put some information about that subject on my channel. Of course, Nash addresses that very well in his book, Becoming Your Own Banker. I highly encourage that read. It's 92 pages, large print, big illustrations. It's simple. It is a paradigm shift, but it's a simple, quick read. Now, the gurus are saying, park your money in some government qualified plan with limits in the front, limits in the back, taxes, fees, lots of implications to consider. Regardless, even, anecdotally from my own experience as a teacher, being brought into a room once a year to see what I should be doing with 401ks and Roth IRAs versus traditional and all these different things, how I should be parking my money somewhere with somebody else who I did not know. And maybe I would see a quarterly statement every year and see whether my number went up or down, and I could choose one of three settings on that investment. Okay, almost totally abdicating any control over my money, over what would be my capital, instead of considering my need for finance in life. See, here I continue on buying cars, paying for or saving for college, taking vacations with my family, boats, ATVs, weddings, engagement rings. I mean, just anything in life that is finance. We're supposed to continue on and borrow other people's money and pay interest there. Or, my cash is king, folks. And I'm not disparaging that. Nelson Nash said that there's the golden rule. He who has the gold makes the rules. But my cash is king folks are going to say, well, I pay cash for everything. That's great. That's fantastic. But if you pay cash for everything, you're going to be losing the economic value that could have been added to your cash. So interest is always paid is what I'm trying to remind us all here with this particular point, is that interest is always paid. Either we're paying interest to somebody else whose money we are using, or if we have amassed our own capital somewhere, probably in an entity that we don't own and control, we are forfeiting the interest that we could have earned otherwise on our money. The economic value that could have been added on top of what it is that we're already going to do. I know that we're already going to be getting the engagement rings, paying for weddings, taking vacations, buying cars, doing the things that we're going to do anyway. But again, two birds with one stone kind of scenario. If we can do two things with our dollars instead of just the one, that's a better case scenario. So with these two trajectories in mind, set money aside and forget it. Set it and forget it. Park it there. Let somebody else control it. Call the shots. We assume all of the risk therein. We're the ones fronting the capital, fronting the money for that investment. We're not controlling that situation. Sure, we're told that we'll be able to expect, looking at national averages, and that's a deceptive term. That's really a deceptive term, and we'll have to cover that in more detail. But that's a deceptive term. But that's what is promoted to us, that we can expect something around an average, which whether that's 7%, 8%, 12%, it's pretty interesting, the numbers that are put out there. But I don't even necessarily want to address that. What I would say is it's not addressed the financing that we do where we're paying interest to others or we're forfeiting the interest that we could have earned. We're so quick to overlook, myself included, our need for finance. So I'm not trying to create an either or situation here. If you want to invest in a 401k, if you want to procure an IRA, do that. Do that. Now, can you do both? Could you fund a policy that you own and control by paying premiums, wherein you could access the cash value in that policy that you own and control to procure a 401k or an IRA or any other quote-unquote asset that you would like to get? Absolutely. However, can you procure a 401k, pay money into that program, and also get something else? Could you go buy gold, leveraging your 401k, not without paying fees and taxes? Okay. I'm just trying to get us to look at and consider. I know that we'll all do what we're comfortable doing, what we want to do, and that's great. But consider the opportunity to be able to do more than one thing with the same dollar. I do have strong opinions about, I like Nelson Nash's wording, it's the retirement trap. Again, I am trying to view all this through the lens of retirement as well. Because what we do today, that analogy of a tree. When's the best time to plant a tree? 20 years ago. Okay? But the next best time is today. So whether you're in your retirement years already or you're looking at retirement years, okay? Nelson Nash was a big proponent of thinking long range, as am I. Thinking multi-generationally. So regardless of whether you're already in your retirement years or your passive income years or you're looking and planning ahead for those, if you know that there's an upward trended trajectory ahead of you on whatever path you choose, how soon do you want to start? How big do you want it to be? How quickly do you want it to go? And this is not a get-rich scenario, becoming your own banker. Nelson Nash would commonly say, it may take the average person 14 years to be able to finance everything that they do in their life with their own privatized banking system. Now, it may take less, it may take more. Okay, but regardless, we finance everything that we do one way or another, and interest either goes to somebody else or we forfeit it unless we're using our own privatized banking system for everything, even leading up to retirement. So let's talk then about those retirement years. What are folks thinking about and doing when they're in those retirement years or those passive income years? Maybe building an addition. Maybe getting another house, right? Getting the nicer car, taking more vacations, wanting to travel more, see the world. Perhaps more for their children or even grandchildren at that point, great-grandchildren, right? To be able to help them in getting their first vehicle or to be able to help pay for their college. Just thinking ahead about legacy and things that they can do to help their family. So, And these are just some suggestions. You know what comes to your mind. So what I'm asking is for you to consider what pathway is going to help lead you best to that scenario, that case that you want to have, but also that gives you the benefits here and now immediately to be able to do everything that you want to do now through your own privatized banking system, to be able to do both. And if you are properly practicing the infinite banking concept as described and conceived by R. Nelson Nash, everything that you do today will just contribute to the death benefit that you'll be able to leave behind tax-free as a transfer of wealth to future generations. And also the cash values that you'll be able to access right now for the here now, for the things that you're doing on a regular basis anyway. So in considering what retirement age, passive income age folks want to do, legacy, travel more, golf, fish, buy the nicer car, get the bigger house or another, whatever that may be, who do you want to be the banker in each of those scenarios? Somebody you don't know, from a bank that you don't own or control any terms, or through a properly structured whole life policy that you're the owner of. That's with a mutual company wherein you're a part owner of that company, and that company has been paying a dividend for well over 100 consecutive years, where you can finance everything yourself, eventually everything, but we all start somewhere as well. I started with one policy. Now we have 3 policies looking at our next policy after having practiced for several years now, since 2015. But we all start somewhere as well. So you can't start thinking too soon about your retirement years or about your passive income years, as Nash said. Now, how we would do that, let me go ahead and say, would be with a whole life policy that you own and control. It would be with a mutual company. It would be with a company that's paid a dividend consecutively for over 100 years. Okay, so a properly structured whole life policy with a mutual company that pays a dividend. And thereby, you could still do any of the investing that you want to do. You would have ownership of that policy. You would have control of the cash values that you have designed and built up in that policy, both for that delayed gratification of, you would instantly have access to a death benefit that would be a tax-free transfer of wealth to your beneficiaries, but also you would have access to that capital now for financing your lifestyle or doing any investing. So these 401ks, these IRAs, and any other government qualified program where we're told to park our money, not to touch it, in the hopes that it will grow and advance, I would suggest that we consider the tax implications of such things. If we view the cycle of a dollar in our life, we go and we earn a dollar somewhere, somehow. And we do that different ways, but when you earn a dollar, aren't we normally taxed on that dollar? Okay. When you want to use that dollar for something that you're going to buy or consume, state taxes, vehicle, property, they're taxes. Taxes cannot be overlooked or avoided here. Not in addressing them anyway. We would be taxed then on that dollar another time, a second time. Okay? And then let's say we do want to procure some investment. We would be taxed there. Whether we pay the taxes now or we delay the taxation is regardless. It still is an implication that we have to consider. So on that same dollar, we're being taxed and taxed and taxed over and over and over again. And what I'm saying is, let's consider the benefit of warehousing that dollar in an entity that we own and control, that is tax deferred, and in the event of accessing that capital via a policy loan with a properly structured whole life policy with a mutual company that pays a dividend, we will be able to access our dollars tax free via those policy loans in a known interest environment. Okay, so there is a very stark contrast between this idea of parking money, not touching it. Taxes have to be considered. Risk has to be considered. What are the guarantees with a 401k like I had? Well, there actually is a guarantee. It shouldn't go below zero. But how exciting is that? How exciting is that? Just how much risk are we wanting to take on with this long-range view of getting to retirement or getting to a passive income age in our life, where we don't just want to be working for our money, but we want our money to be working for us. Again, in a way that we access it and control it without taking additional risk, without working any harder, and use those dollars to work for us. So there's a stark contrast between park it, and hopefully it'll be something better down the road, while over those decades somebody else has access to our capital, our money, and can have all the benefits thereof. Fees, the fees that are associated, those compound as well over the years with government qualified plans, versus creating a system of policies that we can eventually get our income to equal premiums paid into those policies, thereby covering everything in our financial footprint. Again, as a household or as a business, or also including investing that we would do. So there's a great difference there. Other things to consider with government qualified programs are how we are limited on how much we even can put in those programs. And then later on, when you're reaching that more exponential growth, hopefully, then that's when you're compelled, you don't have a choice in the matter, to start taking minimum amounts out of that program, out of that plan, right when it's doing the best that it should be doing in those much later years, again after decades of having not been able to access or touch that. So the limits on the front end, the limits on the back end, not being set by us. Again, this lens that we'll be viewing retirement through is becoming your own banker, where you're the one that owns the entity, where you're the one that controls it. So a stark contrast is there between these two ideas of, set it and forget it. Set a number aside on a regular basis, forget that it's there. So, you don't know what's happening over here. What are the guarantees, the taxes, the fees, and everything that's associated there. Whereas with a whole life policy that's been properly structured, that is a unilateral contract where when you have chosen what amount you're paying into your policy via your premiums, how much premium you're going to be paying, you have guaranteed growth in that policy. You have a very respectable expectation of a dividend, because these mutual companies that we would promote, and I'm not married to any one particular company, I'm married to my wife, and yet you have a very reasonable expectation of a dividend from companies that have been paying a dividend through global pandemics, world wars, depressions, recessions for well over 100 consecutive years. So it's not to be disregarded. Those are two very, very different scenarios. We mentioned that Encore Career earlier as well. To get a business started, and it's easily recognizable that one of the greatest dangers that a business faces is undercapitalization. So if there's something that you're wanting to start and facilitate for yourself, would you rather be beholden to some third-party lender or commercial bank, that you don't own or control, or would you like to be able to set your own terms for anything that you're financing? So those are very different situations there for folks that are looking ahead to be able to make a transition to what could be called an Encore Career, or to start a new business. And we could think of some very interesting examples right there. It was at 49 that Colonel Sanders, after 9 years, but at 49, he had finalized his fried chicken recipe. And he worked his business until it was, overseas, and it was in country after country after country. And at 73 years of age, he sold it because it just gotten so big and massive, it was growing so exponentially that it was more than he himself could continue doing and growing and scaling. So at 73 was when he made that transition. So not too old, not too young, but at 73, you're running, Kentucky Fried Chicken, just one of the most reputable franchise restaurants that are out there. Let's consider Michelangelo, who obviously did many great things before the age of 30. The David statue, before age of 30. And yet, it was at age 74 that he was appointed to be the chief architect of St. Peter's Basilica. So actively, pursuing his abilities and, the manifestation thereof, even at 74 years old. Such a famous place right there. So he's a great example of, what Rabbi Daniel Lapin was saying, never retire, or in contrast with what Nash said, about the retirement trap and how he was eradicating retirement from his vocabulary and focusing on, passive income. Naturally, Michelangelo wasn't being an architect just for the income, and yet there's no denying the skills that he would have honed in getting at that age and everything that he had accomplished, even at that age and beyond. How about Albert Einstein, who at the age of 76 was finalizing a speech that he was to be giving after all of his years and years of accomplishments and interesting endeavors in science. He was fine-tuning a speech that he was to give at the age of 76, and that was right up to him going to the hospital in what was his eventual graduation bed, his deathbed, and at 76, getting ready to go do a speech. Very incredible to consider. How about Moses? And if you're not a big Bible fan, that's okay. But again, I'm just trying to give multiple examples here. How about Moses, who at 120 years old was said not to have dimmed eyes? He was in good health, but his time had come. His graduation date had come at 120 years. I'm simply saying, much like Jim Rohn said about a tree. He said, how tall does a tree grow? See, it just grows absolutely as tall as it can. And if I could replace the word tall there for long, how long do we want to be passionately pursuing what is our purpose or what we enjoy doing? Just how much of a master can we become? Okay, Beethoven didn't need to be doing anything that he didn't want to do outside of music. He created the Ninth Symphony, I believe it was, when he was 54 years old. Okay? He did great things earlier on, but I'm just saying, age is a number in many regards. And the idea that retirement can be a trap is very real. That we're either growing, much like that tree, or we're not. When does a tree stop growing? When it's dead. It doesn't matter if it's even fallen over in a storm. It'll start shooting branches up out of the side to get vertical again. So until it's dead, it just keeps growing. So I'm a big proponent and fan of the concept that we should avoid this trap of retirement as well. It's very reasonable and beautiful even to approach passive income diligently. I love that. So food for thought there. I hope that this video has been helpful in considering retirement and how we view it. You should come up with your approach, your philosophy to retirement. I know that I've mentioned a couple of authors and books on top of, obviously, R. Nelson Nash and his book, Becoming Your Own Banker, and how he called retirement the retirement trap, and how he spoke of the importance of passive income versus becoming stagnant and stale and going backwards by retiring instead of continuing to pursue excellence. And he lived a life of an example of that very thing himself, working into his more advanced age until his graduation date. And if you have any questions about how this concept of becoming your own banker could play into your retirement, your passive income plans, I'd love to be able to hear from you. Of course, you can comment on this video, like and subscribe if that makes sense to you. But if you would like to have a conversation about how we could approach looking at retirement or your passive income years, I'd love to be able to hear from you and have that conversation. You can reach me at 828-817-4223, or you can email durhamtalents@gmail.com. I hope this video has been helpful. I look forward to our next conversation. Have a great day. Take care.